Well, welcome everybody. My name is Ed Beshore. I'm a co-leader of the Tucson, Arizona chapter, and this session is called Tips from the Region. It's a panel discussion with CCL leaders highlighting successful programs and lessons learned from those activities. Our guest panelists are Ian Harrison from Colorado, Jane Conlin from Arizona, and Tom Moyer from Utah. And here's how we'll organize this session. Each panelist will take 5 minutes to present and discuss their program in succession, one immediately following the other. Then we'll move on to questions. It's our hope that holding questions off until all the presentations are finished will facilitate discussion between the panelists about shared insights and common takeaways from their experiences. As a reminder to the panelists, I will text them when they have 1 minute left. So have your phones close by. If you don't hear me, I'll just start waving my arms or just break in. We will be taking questions throughout the time through chat, and I have renamed my screen name at the bottom to Ask Me. And if you open your chat window over on the right and at the bottom, you'll see that you can send Ask Me a message, and I'll record those questions. And if you would, please keep your questions succinct and let me know who you are directing your question to an individual or to the whole panel. With that, we will move on to the first speaker, Ian Harrison. Ian, please briefly introduce yourself, tell us where your chapter is located, and let's hear about your success story.
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Ian Harrison. I come from Colorado, although arguably you can tell from my accent that I wasn't born here. I am the conservative state lead for Colorado, one of 12 actually, and there's another one on this call. I guess, Tom, that's still unfair, but you've got that and many other jobs as well. The conservative state leads are an attempt really to organize the, if you like, conservative caucus around the structure of a state. And I guess what I'm going to talk about very briefly is how we do that in Colorado. This is an important aspects of CCL's work, and candidly quite a difficult one, but because of the way that CCL is politically organized, I guess, in historic terms. In Colorado specifically, I'll run through very quickly the things that we did because we've only got a couple of minutes. One of the things that we've done is created a conservative caucus at a state level. That has got about 30 people in it. We meet every couple of weeks. And it includes the liaisons for our Republican congressmen and senators, which is very useful because it enables us to strategize at a state level. And that's one of the things that's probably most obviously different about the way that the Conservative caucus thinks about its representation is we tend to see the Republicans as a bloc as opposed to individuals because the GOP is typically more organized around a state level view and a platform view. So one of the things we've done is have this regular weekly call or bi-weekly call to discuss those issues. The other one is that we have developed a sort of strategy. That's something that's needed. It's not totally comprehensive, but it really just deals with the fact that we need a strategy to recruit, retain, and activate conservatives in Colorado. It's worth thinking that through at a district level. It would be no surprise that most of our Republican representation is in a rural district, and the methods of communication, the way that we organize our chapters are different at a rural basis. There's a lot of challenges that happen there, and it's worth thinking that strategy through. So the team spends a fair bit of time thinking about that particular strategy. We also think a lot about how carbon fee and dividend is actually articulated through conservative values, through the lens of conservative values. It doesn't change in any way the way we feel about the policy, but the way in which we describe it is sometimes quite different. And I think that's been quite important. We worked hard with our liaisons. Where we didn't have liaisons, we worked with our state coordinators to find liaisons, which was an Amy, of course, and we've been successful in doing that. And where we could, and it was appropriate, we added a liaison because we were able to have somebody of a conservative nature be a co-liaison to a Republican representative, which I think has been quite useful. Last couple of things, we looked very carefully at the idea of a CF&D impact on a rural district, which is going to be very different than the impact that it would have on a large metropolitan area. And we put together some impact studies, which we then passed on to our Republican representatives. We also put together a conservative conversation framework, which I thought was quite useful because, again, it was back to that language of how you articulate CF&D. So that was quite good. And the last thing was we tried where possible to get around each of our chapters, and there are 14 in Colorado. We haven't done them all, but it's useful to go and have a conversation from conservative points of view with each of the group leaders and with those chapters, to try and basically make sure that we're clear about what it's like to be a conservative joining a CCL chapter, what would make a conservative feel welcome in that chapter, and how they can really take a major role going forward. Okay, I'll stop there and hand it over to, I think, Tom next.
That's right. Thanks, Ian. Actually, Jane is next.
Oh, sorry, Jane.
Next up is Jane Conlin. Jane, before telling us your story, briefly introduce yourself and tell us where your chapter is located.
Well, I'm going to unmute myself first. So I've been co-leader of the Tucson chapter for about 5 years. And thanks, Ed. And thank you all for joining us. It's a nice group. I'm here to talk about lobbying outreach that we call Coffee with the Candidates. And I'm going to share with you 3 different ways that we've used the program to bring an increasingly larger group of public leaders into our CCL conversation. But first, I'd like to take a quick poll to see if your chapters are engaging lots of your members into the lobbying activities. Robin was so sweet to do this. So if you would put in yes, no, is your chapter bringing in lots of volunteers into lobbying activities? So while not much of a response, thanks for one. So we'll move on. Ed and I started the Coffee with Candidates program during Arizona's primary campaign in 2018. We discovered that most of the volunteers who came to our chapter's meeting wanted to lobby. At that time, we had 7 or 5 different groups, and we were responsible for both of our Senate. We had liaisons to the Senate and to 2 congressional districts, and we also lobbied a 3rd. And yet, despite all that, we had so many volunteers who had never been to a lobby meeting, either here in Tucson or in Washington, D.C. So when we had a meeting once, a chapter meeting, lots of new people, I threw out some ideas for lobbying and discovered that if we lowered the cost and the time commitment and the responsibility, that everybody was pretty interested in doing that. And so I threw out a sign-up sheet, and we had 20 people sign up. So I got busy, and the first thing that Ed and I did was to discuss our goals. And we decided that, we had been to town halls where there were a lot of candidates who they were concerned about climate change, but they didn't have any specific information. They really were vague. They didn't know what to do. So we thought that was the first place that we would start. We wanted to engage lots of these 20 people who had signed up and send them out to meet with candidates before the town halls. We wanted to talk to them initially about carbon fee and dividend in our group and give them some tools so that they would be empowered to speak about climate change at the town hall meetings. Our second goal, of course, was to invigorate our chapter and our volunteers. And we thought that it would help them be more involved, read more laser talks, do extra reading, even talk to their neighbors more, and just sign up for tabling. So we got started, and later in the summer, I went to some of those town halls after our volunteers had been meeting with them and discovered we'd hit a home run. All 3 town halls that I went to had at least 2 of the candidates discuss carbon fee and dividend, carbon pricing. They were not afraid to talk about climate change because they had some real solutions and could tackle it head on. So that was pretty exciting. We knew that we were seeing a real change in the way that they were advocating for the climate. We've devised a different program for each year. The first year we were focusing on just getting the word out about carbon fee and dividend. Last year, Tucson had a mayoral campaign. And so we did, we did 2 different things. First, we sent a questionnaire to all the candidates, and then we asked them to meet us for coffee. So again, we hit a home run. All 3 candidates answered our question in great detail. And then they brought up the climate change and solutions, and they proposed solutions at all of their appearances, their town halls, the debates, in print. And in fact, our local newspaper categorized the campaign as being climate focused. And we think that it played a large part, we played a large part because we had encouraged them to prepare for these debates ahead of time. The momentum increased after that campaign, and 2 weeks ago, Tucson City Council voted 6-0 in favor of declaring a climate emergency. So this year, with everything on Zoom, we changed the coffee and candidates again. This year, we divided all of our state races, added the Community College Board, the State Corporation Commission, and we sent out, our members sent out invitations to everybody to come and talk to us at our monthly meeting. And everybody who responded positively has been invited. As of our October meeting, we will have had 11 candidates, including all 3 candidates, or 3 of the 4 candidates for the Arizona Corporation Commission. So we're pretty excited. We think this is an opportunity that would never have happened without Zoom. And this has raised our profile as CCL for carbon fee and dividend. It's raised our profile in the community. It has instilled confidence in our solution. And we think that just there has been no downside to our outreach. I have to say though, that our chapter also has an active media group, and they've gotten 4 op-eds and at least a dozen LTEs published. And so I think that that background has really helped encourage people to come and meet with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Jane. That was great. And last but not least, we have Tom Moyer. Tom, please introduce yourself and tell us where your chapter is located.
All right, my name's Tom Moyer. I'm the state coordinator for Utah for CCL, and I'm part of the Wasatch Back chapter, which is Park City, Midway, and Heber. Wasatch Back meaning on the back side of the mountains from the Wasatch Front, which is where the majority of Utah's population lives. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the town hall that Madeline spotlighted in that video with John Curtis and how that came about and how it went, and then hopefully answer whatever questions you have about it. I should start by saying that I was by no means the most involved in that town hall. That's the product of a lot of people's work, many of whom did much more on that than I did. I'm just representing it today. And the other thing to start off letting you know is that the district that John Curtis represents is very Republican. It's something like R+26, and it contains all of the coal production in Utah. So this is not anywhere close to what you would consider a climate-friendly district. And we're just extremely fortunate to have a supportive representative from that district and to have a good relationship with him. And we're extremely lucky that he wants to work with us on stuff like this. So he has been, and you could tell from that video, that footage was taken not just from the town hall that we did, but from several different climate events that he's done. He's averaging something like 1 or 2 climate events a week right now. He's written a climate op-ed, he's co-sponsored legislation, and you know, he is working to bring his constituents along towards actually being able to pass more meaningful legislation. He's still not on board with what we want him to do, which is fee and dividend, but he's very on board with talking about the issue and moving the politics among his constituents. So the origins of this were we had a different town hall on climate change in Park City. Park City has already endorsed both fee and dividend and HR 763. It's also, it's in the neighboring district, but it overlaps. But that's an extremely friendly territory for climate action. And we did a town hall there, sort of focused on the community and informing people. And we wanted it to be wider than just fee and dividend, and it was. And we invited John Curtis's district director to that, along with staffers from other congressional offices. And she attended, and we chatted with her afterwards, and she told us the one thing we really needed to be including was the coal communities and rural areas that we don't have or didn't have representation from. And so as a result of that, we started talking to those communities and started thinking about what a similar event would look like that included them. So we attended John Curtis's Rural Economic Summit in the heart of coal country, which was focused on economic diversification. That community is very interested in building non-coal economy for themselves because they know that coal is coming to an end. They're not interested in hurrying it out, but they know they need other options, and so they're working hard at that. So in this subsequent town hall that John Curtis participated in, we had 3 mayors, one of whom was the mayor of that coal town, in a town hall about climate change. That was a first for him. That was a first for anybody in that community to do something like that. And we really, really wanted that to be a friendly environment for him. So this was not a sales pitch on fee and dividend at all. What we wanted was to help the congressman talk to his constituents about climate change in his own words. So we made it a town hall about both climate change and air pollution. And air pollution is very salient in this part of the state. Everybody's aware it's a problem. Everybody wants to fix it. The mayors hear from their constituents about it. So we included an air pollution epidemiologist available to sort of answer the tough questions, both about air pollution and climate change. Obviously, the congressman, we included 3 mayors, and then we had 2 students. One is our CCL lead from BYU, and the other was also from BYU and a regional coordinator for Young Conservatives for Carbon Dividends. And we're working closely with them. So we did a lot of work to reach out to those rural communities to get participation from them. And I think the questions reflected it. They weren't all particularly supportive questions. You know, some were like, isn't it true that scientists have a bias about this and a reason to play up climate science for their funding? And I loved getting questions like that. I loved getting our congressman to be able to say to his constituents, no, 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 that's a rumor. That's not actually how this works. That was much more important than the sort of the strength of the policy response that one might have heard in that town hall. So I view this as a huge step forward to communicate this to the type of audience we need to be reaching. So I'll stop there and I'll leave the rest for any questions people might have about it.
Well, that's great. So there we have it. 3 really interesting stories about successful programs here in the Mountain West region. So now we're going to move on to question and answer period that will go until just a little bit before 20 minutes after the hour. As a reminder, we're taking questions through the chat. I've renamed myself to Ask Me at B. And if you open your chat window, you'll see at the bottom that you can send people a private message. Just hit the scroll box or the little blue box and look for Ask Me. Please keep your questions brief and let me know who you're directing your question to, just to make it a little easier on me, Ian, Jane, or Tom, or perhaps to the whole panel. So we've got one question, and this really goes to Ian. Is it possible to get a copy of some of the impact studies that you've put together, Ian?
Yes. In an answer, I'll figure out how to do that appropriately by sending it to the conference organizers. But yeah, we can do
Okay,
that.
very good. That would be great. I also have a question for Jane. Jane, how did you keep the outreach bipartisan?
Well, we talked about that. We decided that if we invited people, if we tried to reach out to everybody equally, then it was up to them to respond to us. And we couldn't do any more than that. So the first year with our coffee program, we contacted Greens, Independents. We tried to contact Republicans and everybody across the board. And so we could only meet with people who wanted to meet with us. And that has been the case with all 3 years of the program.
Okay. So we've got a question for Tom. And this occurred to me as well, almost immediately. How did you get the mayor of the coal town to agree to attend these town halls? That sounds like it might be a very hostile environment or, touchy politically. How did that work?
Yeah, I think that only came about because we had been to his town and met him in person. So
Okay.
we attended their event, and that's about a 3-hour drive from where we live, wearing our CCL name tags in a coal town, talking to them about economic development. And it was, there was some suspicion of us in the beginning about who are you, why are you here? And as soon as it became clear that we weren't at all hostile to what they were trying to do, we were very supportive of that. It became a much friendlier conversation. And so this wasn't the first contact with him. There were several conversations about, would you ever be interested in doing an event with us? Sure. So yeah, it wasn't the first ask.
Okay. Tom, also, I just got a follow up. What got Representative Curtis positive about climate change? Was this something he came into office really already feeling, or did he evolve after he came into office, and did CCL have anything to do with it?
I don't think we changed his mind on climate change. He talks about an evolution in his thinking on this, of sort of growing in importance and willingness to talk about it. And I think we played a role in helping him be willing to talk about it, but not in his desire to do it. I think that comes from him, and we got lucky with who we got in office.
So this kind of reflects actually what we're hearing elsewhere, is that there really is an evolving sense out of some of the conservative representatives, at the local, state, and national levels on this issue.
Yeah, and the role we play is in helping make it safe for them to talk about this.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Jane, what kind of special preparation did you give the volunteers? I mean, it would seem like if you're going to send people out to talk directly with members of Congress or people or candidates who are running for local offices, you needed to give them some guidance.
Well, of course, in our meetings, we began each meeting with about 10 minutes of training. but we weren't fine. And so we were doing laser talks at our general meeting. Other than that, Robin, do you have, are you there? Do you have that one sheet? I had a questionnaire I gave everybody, and I'll send it to you if you want it.
You can share if you want on your.
Yeah, you know what? I thought for some reason I thought you had. At any rate, we have a little postcard that we made in by the thousands, and I know you've all seen it. I just had it here, and it's that quarter-page flyer, and we sent everybody out with that. We said when you sit down at your meeting, there were just a few questions, just basic questions, and you could send them to your coffee partner ahead of time. And it was just a few questions. How do you feel about what's happening with the climate? Do you see any problems? Do you have any ideas? And then we led up to if they were really concerned, would they help us out? Would they put something on their website? But as far as their training, we wanted to keep it really low key. We were looking at building personal relationships, and we wanted to keep it as having a cup of coffee with a friend, meeting a new friend. So the 3 steps on that little sheet, I'll wave it in a minute when I find it here. And
we can also supply, there we go.
You know the one. So we have about 5,000 in Ed's garage. And we also have another 1,000 in Spanish. So that was about it. A simple questionnaire and that, and then they could follow up with the household impact study or something like that afterwards.
And I would also probably mention that if people want any of the resources that we put together, we can give Robin a contact name and they can get a hold of us, and we'd be happy to follow up with, the materials. Does that sound reasonable, Jane?
Yeah, I'll look for it right now. And
Okay. So Ian, one of the questions we've got also is, did these conservative caucuses that you put together, are these strictly for working at the federal level, or are you using these groups of this caucus to also approach local and state politicians?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. No, definitely using them to approach local and state politicians. In fact, in Colorado, arguably we're having better success at the local level than we are at the federal level, frankly. There's a resolution project in Colorado, which is led actually by one of the CCL Conservative Fellows, who's a sort of national asset, but it's being done in Colorado, which is really being driven, frankly, by that individual from the Conservative Caucus and one of the state coordinators, Jim Hooten. But that's been excellent because it's provided a significant input and access to Republican state representatives, which we frankly have been looking for some time. The other thing is working hard on op-eds, and the same individuals managed to get an op-ed published by a Republican candidate. And as Tom just said, the real issue is getting representatives to talk about this and providing space and cover and support for Republicans to talk about climate change, rather than just trying to decide whether they're going to support CF&D. This is about getting into the debate, which is extremely important. So op-eds, the one we just published in Colorado, is very, very important. It mentions CF&D, but ultimately it's really about the discussion that conservatives should be having around climate change, helping Republican Party find, frankly, policy and language to address climate change. So yes, lots of state activity.
And kind of a follow-up on that, actually, is there some specific messaging that you could share with us that you've pulled together? Because you mentioned that, one of the things that you looked at was how CFD impacts rural areas. Of course, that's something that's shared probably by a lot of folks here since we're a Mountain West organization. And, how does the CFD really bounce off folks who are in the rural areas? What's some specific messaging that you used to try to approach them? And do you have any resources that you could share along the lines in terms of doing those kinds of presentations to conservative districts?
We do have some resources. It's not as organized as I would like, but it is getting organized. So there will be an opportunity to share that in the future. The Conservative caucus at a national level is working hard to deal with conservative messaging from, or rather CF&D attributes from the lens of a conservative. And that should be done really in the next maybe 6 weeks. And we're hoping to share that nationally. But in the meantime, if we want to do something regionally, I can pull something together. To give you a very quick run through, I mean, the list of things that appeals to conservatives around CF&D is actually quite long. I'll start with self-responsibility, because the fee and dividend process really allows people to make their own decisions, frankly, which is extremely important to conservative ways of thinking. Arguably, it's a fee, and if we're trying to avoid it becoming a tax, arguably that's something that conservatives are very exercised about, as you may have noticed over the years. It's a strong reliance on the market economy, which is something which is very important. The aspects of market economy are extremely powerful and not always well recognized for their strengths and good things, and CF&D relies very heavily on that market economy. Border adjustments, from an international perspective, keeps things fair. You may often hear Republicans saying, what's the point? China's just going to blow us out of the water with carbon emissions. Well, the way to deal with that, of course, is a border adjustment. The electoral math, which Tom referred to earlier on, there are many studies, but 75% broadly of Republicans under 40 are worried about climate change. And so there's a natural push from the Republican Party to address this issue. That's not specific to CF&D, but it's a good point. Government oversight and regulation, CF&D essentially has the opportunity to avoid new and future regulatory practices that may not be in the best interests of I guess, how Republicans see the world. So regulation is a big part of that. It provides a planned transition for private capital to come off the sidelines and invest heavily in innovation. And that planned transition very specifically works for rural communities, because in many cases, people can see what's going to happen. What they don't want is sudden changes that their communities would be decimated by. So CF&D, it provides for a long-term planned transition to cleaner fuels, which is something that's very important and a very different outcome from what regulation might produce. And the last one is energy independence. Ultimately, this is a national security issue. And although we have moved very quickly to provide ourselves with fossil fuels in this country at a level we have not in the past been able to do that, ultimately, we are still suffering from a national security issue around fossil fuels, and clean energy would resolve that, frankly. I've got many more, but that was a very quick list.
That's very good, though. I think it's a lot of help. I know that, in the Tucson area, we have this sort of dichotomy. We have a very progressive metro sorts of districts, and then we have a lot of rural districts over large areas. And it makes the job of our members of Congress very hard. They're walking a tightrope all the time, and trying to find messaging that appeals to both sides really is sometimes kind of difficult.
Ed, can I add one more thing on the back of that,
Yeah.
for the rural aspect of this very quickly? One of the things we try to do with the Rural Impact Study is less about science and statistics and more about the aspiration of a future rural community that has transitioned from fracking or from some other aspect of fossil fuels to clean energy. And finding that aspirational narrative that paints a picture of a new and bright future is something that's very hard to come by in a rural district. So we've majored on trying to point out what it could look like in 20 years if everybody pulls together and works with what's about to happen regardless. So aspiration is a really big part of this journey.
Yeah, and we just had an immediate follow-up. If asking you if some point you could post or make available your full list of benefits of fee and dividend for the rural users.
Okay, will do. I
That'd be
got
great.
my
That'd be
orders.
great. So I have a question for Tom. How did you promote the town halls? How did that work in some of these small communities? What was your, did you have any sense of how effective your promotion activities were?
Yeah, we tried hard to reach the rural communities, and we were partly effective. I wish we'd gotten even more outreach to those communities. But we did, all of our usual CCL tools. We did radio interviews. We wrote letters to the editor. We did a press release. We sent emails to CCL members and friendly organizations. And then we asked the mayors in these towns to put the message out to their own constituents.
Mm-hmm.
So basically every avenue we could possibly think of to reach people.
Right.
And I would say, despite that, probably 2/3 of the people on the Zoom were friendly. Were people who were already engaged on climate. So it would have been nice to reverse that ratio.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a question that goes to the whole panel, and we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. So if everybody could maybe take a minute. To all the panelists in our group, we often feel that our outreach to state and local politicians is ignored. Do any of you or all of you have any tips about how you can push through that initial lack of response? And anybody who's got something that they can go with first, I'll let them go with it.
I could talk about this one for an hour, but I'll try and keep it to a minute. We passed a climate resolution, a stewardship resolution in the Utah legislature 2 years ago. So that was a huge push, and it involved basically us talking to every single member of the Utah legislature and finding people in their districts, in all 100 districts, to talk to those legislators. So we got good at it.
A lot of footwork.
Yeah, we got good at it.
Jane, have you got some thoughts on that? Tips about pushing through?
As far as the results of our coffee with candidates, we built some good relationships with House and Senate leaders in the Arizona State Legislature. And as Ed knows, that a year ago, we wrote a resolution that they introduced, and it got stuck because it came from Democrats. But then when it got held back in committee, the Democratic leaders who we had met with then put forth a proclamation on Earth Day. And every Democrat stood up in the House, and they made speeches. We helped write them, and we just have a really, and those were people from all around the state, including from the Navajo and rural areas in Yuma, agricultural areas. We've really extended, and we've made a lot of friends throughout the state.
Ian, any thoughts on that question about pushing through and dealing with the initial lack of response that oftentimes occurs?
Well, I think the issue is that for local politicians, they're obviously concerned, obviously, with what is local. The problem with climate change is it's often considered to be a global, if not national, issue. Therefore, the province of the federal government. Make it local. And the way to initiate that conversation is say that change is coming regardless, and open a question up. What are you representative, actually doing to prepare for this ginormous change that's coming in your district, in your local area? And in often cases, you'll find that there actually isn't a good narrative for that. So there's an opportunity then to engage with what that transition is going to look like and what the best policies might be to facilitate that change for the benefit of that local area. But the trick is make it local. And to build on Tom's point, resolution is the thing. It gets everybody talking. And Jane, I know you just said that we didn't get very far because it got stuck. We've had more success by actually getting the Republicans to write the resolution, and have asked the Democrats to just take a back seat for the moment, which they were very happy to do, by the way. They were very curious to see what the Republicans are going to put together. But yeah, it's a project that gets everybody involved. So resolutions are very, very good things to start.
Very good. So Jane, in the last minute or so that we've got, did you want to comment on the response from the poll?
Oh, well, I only saw one person say that their
Oh.
chapter was trying to engage lots of members. There, we have, if 5 people said their chapter has gotten lots of members engaged in speaking. Can you all see it? With local politicians. 3 said no. I just would encourage you. I'm here today to encourage all of you to use lots of members, all of the volunteers you can get your hands on, because they will enjoy the process of learning more about carbon fee and dividend, and the relationships are invaluable.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, now with that last remark, we've reached the end of our session. Unbelievably, it went really fast. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I'd like to thank Ian Harrison, Jane Conlin, and Tom Moyer for their efforts on behalf of the planet and the climate, and for taking the time to share their stories with us.